Imagine a heavy winter in Yellowstone National Park. A combination of snow, wet ground, and a microburst has brought a massive pine tree down across a roadway, trapping a line of vehicles. The adults gather around the trunk. They are capable people with an assortment of tools, jacks, ropes, even a hatchet, but they remain fixated on the massive base of the tree, frustrated by the inadequacy of their equipment. Then a 12-year-old child walks to the narrow top of the tree and lifts. He doesn't clear the road alone, he simply changes the group's perspective. By shifting the leverage, he allows the adults to line up along the trunk, distribute the load, and pivot the obstacle down the embankment. This is the core of facilitation. A helper is not a hero who carries everyone's tree. A helper discovers where the group needs to lift. This contrasts with our standard assumption of helping, the idea that a knowledgeable expert simply delivers a correct answer to a passive recipient. In reality, technical suggestions usually fail when they arrive before trust is built, or when they ignore the invisible environmental costs that a person is not ready to pay. Human problems are ecological. Solving them requires a co-constructed process that accounts for a person's entire environment. To guide that process, we use a recursive framework called exploration, insight, and movement, EIM. This model is a continuous loop. Data flows in both directions, meaning an attempt at change can lead the group right back to the beginning of the cycle. Exploration maps the context of the struggle. Insight co-constructs a new understanding of that context. Movement translates that understanding into realistic experiments. Mastering this loop allows the facilitator to move beyond the role of problem fixer, providing the specific leverage required to guide sustainable change. When faced with a client in distress, the most dangerous liability is the fixing reflex, the automatic urge to rescue or advise. We tell someone, "Here is what you need to do," with the intention of providing direction and reducing their pain. But premature direction strips the client of their agency. It bypasses their readiness and results in a plan they aren't actually prepared to own. True influence requires specific person-centered conditions, a concept pioneered by Carl Rogers. These include congruence, or professional genuineness, unconditional positive regard, and empathic understanding. However, facilitators often overlook the most critical condition, reception. A facilitator's empathy is only effective if the client can actually receive it. Culture, trauma history, and power imbalances all dictate whether the helper's intentions translate into a safe experience for the person being helped. This leads to the first note, exploration. This is the active mapping of a person's ecology, not just a period of polite listening. Take the case of Marcus. He misses 2 group sessions and arrives 20 minutes late to a third. His peers immediately assume he isn't committed to the process. The group relies on a default assumption that Marcus has a character flaw or a lack of motivation. Proper exploration uncovers the environmental data. Marcus's work shift ends moments before group starts, and his bus transfer is notoriously unreliable. This allows the facilitator to ask the functional question: what purpose does a behavior serve? In this context, Marcus's lateness is an attempt to balance his job with his recovery. Exploration reframes a perceived moral failing into an actionable structural conflict. Once the context is mapped, we move to insight. This is a co-constructed hypothesis that links patterns together. In a men's recovery group, notice that when a member shares a vulnerability, others immediately respond with teasing or jokes. The facilitator tentatively names the pattern, suggesting this toughness role protects their dignity but blocks the support they came for. A failed insight is easy to spot. It results in sudden silence, frantic agreement, or a client collapsing into shame. If an interpretation produces only cleverness for the facilitator and shame for the group, the map is wrong, and the process must revert to exploration. Finally, we move to the last note. In the EIM model, we use the term movement specifically to distinguish it from the older concept of action. Action implies a finalized, dramatic change. Movement honors the incremental and the recursive, like practicing a boundary or requesting a specific type of support. Rigid action plans tend to fail because they ignore barriers. Movement succeeds by building small, testable experiments with ecological fit. We anticipate internal fears and external obstacles, like poverty or retaliation, and build if-then plans to handle them before the session ends. This also changes our relationship with setbacks. In the EIM loop, a setback is not proof of resistance. It is fresh data that tells us exactly where the support system failed, which feeds right back into the next cycle of exploration. The EIM model scales to the group as a whole. Consider the chaotic Wednesday group. Devin didn't do his homework. Tajwa criticizes him. Lena offers unsolicited advice, and Omar complains about wasted time. The conflict becomes a cascade of red arrows and loud voices. Addressing only Devin in this moment turns the rest of the group into a passive audience. Instead, the facilitator addresses the group as a whole. They name the systemic pattern, that the group is using rapid advice to escape the helplessness of sitting with someone's struggle. This leads to a collective movement intervention. The group creates a new protocol that requires mapping barriers before anyone is allowed to offer a solution. Group facilitation transforms the culture of the room, creating a self-sustaining environment where members become resources for one another. The rule of EIM is simple: explore before you explain, co-construct meaning before you prescribe, and treat every movement as information. This is an ethical mandate. Technical knowledge and warm intentions are dangerous with actual competence and a commitment to safety. The facilitator must constantly monitor power dynamics and their own urgency to fix people. It returns to the leverage found on that Yellowstone road. Helping means abandoning the hero complex. You understand the ecology of the struggle, and you help the group discover exactly where to lift.